Hello, Algebra 1. I just wanted to go over a couple problems with you. So we're both on the, or we're all on the same page here. This is for QM4 solving for a variable. I'm just going to kind of pick a few out and then we're going to work through them and then, yeah, ask questions when you got them. The first one, number one, says C equals 2 pi r. Remember, when you've got no mathematical symbols in between, that indicates multiplication. Okay, so we've got C equals 2 times pi times r. We're trying to solve for r, which means we either want to get to r equals or something equals r. Well, what's happening to r in this case? Well, it's being multiplied by both 2 and pi. So how do you undo multiplying by 2 and pi? Yeah, division. Divide both sides by 2 and pi. Because what happens on the left-hand side of the equal side, we get C divided by 2 pi equals, well, 2 divided by 2 is 1. That simplifies to 1. Pi divided by pi simplifies to 1. And r is just left because it's 1 times r, or just r. C divided by 2 pi equals r. We have isolated, we have solved for the variable indicated. What's another one that's pretty good here? I like number 6 as well. It says SA equals 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h, and we're going to solve this for h. Well, what's happening to h? First, it's being multiplied by 2 pi and r, and then we're going to add 2 pi r squared to that. So in terms of undo steps, I need to first subtract 2 pi r squared from both sides of the equal sign. So this is SA minus 2 pi r squared equals 2 pi r h. Well, what did we say that was happening to h? It's being multiplied by 2 pi and r. Divide both sides by 2 pi and r. Because 2 divided by 2 simplifies to 1. Pi divided by pi simplifies to 1. R divided by r simplifies to 1. And I'm just left with h because it's 1 times 1 times 1 times h. On the left-hand side, we got SA. Bonus points if you know what SA is. They're fake bonus points, but surface area. SA minus 2 pi r squared divided by 2 pi r equals h. Think of this, and you can go back and think of this in terms of our do and undo steps. We're doing the exact same thing. We're doing the exact same thing. What we were doing before, the do and undo steps. Okay. Let's go ahead. We got some scientific formulas in here. I like number 9, so I'm going to work on number 9. It says A equals FV minus OV all divided by T. We're trying to solve for OV. In other words, OV equals or something equals OV. Well, what's happening here? It's a negative OV. So in reality, I've got kind of a 3-step approach I'm going to take. OV is first being multiplied by -1. And then to that, I'm adding FV because it's a positive FV. And then I'm dividing by T. So how can I do this thing? Well, do these steps in the inverse order, right? Inverse steps in the opposite order. The last thing I did was divide by T. The first thing I should undo would be multiply both sides by T. And then I should subtract FV. And then I should divide or multiply by -1 because it's just 1. So let's go ahead and do that. A equals FV minus OV divided by T. If I multiply both sides by T, I have TA equals FV minus OV. That's step 1. Step 2 says I should subtract FV from both sides. So TA minus FV. Whoa, try that again. TA minus FV equals negative OV, but we don't want negative OV. So we're going to divide or multiply both sides by -1. And if we do that, when you divide or multiply by -1, you're just changing the sign. This becomes negative TA plus FV equals OV. You could write that in many, many different ways. You could have OV equals FV minus TA. However you want to do it, you just have to have those terms there. Gonna go ahead and do one more. Actually, I'm going to do two more because I like number 14 a lot. It says h minus 4 divided by j equals k. We're trying to solve for j. We want either j equals or something equals j. How are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? Well, this one's a little bit different. This one's not, we can't directly do the do and undo steps because j is on the bottom, right? So let's think about different ways we can do that. How can I get j from the denominator to a numerator? Well, here's what I'm going to do. Got a lot of different ways. Here's how I'm going to start here. What I'm going to do, if I'm dividing by j, what's an inverse operation that I could do? I could multiply both sides by j. And so what happens? Well, j divided by j simplifies to 1, or just h minus 4 equals kj. And now I've just got a one-stepper. If I divide both sides by k, that simplifies to 1j. So h minus 4 divided by k equals j. But there's got to be other ways to do this. There absolutely are. So I'm going to take something that you guys love to do. You guys love your cross multiplication. Why don't I do this? H minus 4 divided by j equals k. And if I do that, cross multiplication requires that I have two fractions or ratios set equal to one another in a proportion. Well, how do I make k stay the same, but make it a fraction or a ratio? Divide by 1. Now you can cross multiply. I get jk or kj, however you want to think about it. Oops, didn't want to do that. Kj equals, well, 1 times h minus 4 is just h minus 4. Well, if I divide both sides by k again, I end up with j equals h minus 4 divided by k. So that's just a couple different ways that you can think about those, especially the ones with fractions when you're dividing by the variable that you want to get by itself. So those are some really good ways to think about. Let's go and take a look at 17, because 17 is a very common one here. I'm trying to solve for z. I'm looking at this, I've got 2/5 times in parentheses z plus 1 equals y. Now, knowing this, I'm trying to get z. This looks a lot like a two-step equation like we've already done. Looks a lot like a two-step equation. If I knew what z was, I would first add 1, and then I would multiply by 2/5. And I would get y, but I don't want y, I want to get z. So what am I going to do? I'm going to first divide by 2/5. And this is the question, when I divide by a fraction, going back to our first three targets, what happens when I divide by a fraction? Like one-step equations here. When I divide by a fraction, I need to flip that fraction or invert and multiply. So I'm actually going to multiply both sides by 5/2. We'll see why that works here in a second. And then I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So let's go ahead and knock this thing out, right? The first thing that I said I need to do, let me rewrite it here. The first thing that I said we need to do is multiply by 5/2. And if we do that, here's why this works on the left-hand side. I get 10 divided by 10 right there. Or if I cross simplified first, I get 1 divided by 1. Remember, cross multiplying is when you have an equal sign in between. Cross simplifying is when you're multiplying two things, two fractions. Okay, this just simplifies to 1 and leaves me with z plus 1 equals, and you can write this multiple ways. I could have 5/2 y, or I could have 5y divided by 2, however you want to write it. We've taken care of the first step. Now we have to subtract 1 from both sides. And I end up with z equals 5/2 y minus 1. So that's what you're really looking for in these. If we got more questions, go ahead, send me an email, sign up for one of those sign up genius things, hop into class, let me know. Hope you guys are doing well. Have a great day.